aspiring authors, storytellers. So excited to be here today with Millana Snow. Millana is just an extraordinary person who is a expert in ancient practices of bringing that to energy work, including breath work. And she also is an influencer, although she didn't want me to say that. She does really incredible work at venues like the Soho House and NYU in Columbia. And most recently, and part of why we're speaking her today, is she is the author of a traditionally published book. It's All Within You. And this is coming out right now. She's in the middle of her book launch and so lucky to have her here speaking to us today. First of all, I just want to thank you for being here, Millana.
Thank you for having me, May. It's so good to see you.
And I did have an opportunity to work with Millana a bit on her book, but I really am excited to speak with you about your author journey. And I'd love to just start at the beginning. Like, where were you and what was happening in your life when you decided you were going to write a book?
Ooh, that's a great question. The first thing I guess I would say is that, like so many people listening, it's always been a dream of mine. It was always something that I wanted to do. As a kid, I read a lot of books and I really enjoyed learning by exploring, you know, the world outside of my home life through books. And so that was always a dream. But I think professionally, that started to really evolve when so many of my colleagues and friends in the space had their books coming out. And I really realized, like, oh, this is something that I can do. If my close friends are doing this, this is something I can do. And so that kind of sparked that original idea that that was possible for me by seeing some of my peers begin to do that.
Did you have a sense of what you wanted to write? And if so, like, where did that come from?
You know, it's interesting because I've been studying and practicing this work since I was a little girl. I have a very non-traditional childhood in that I started meditating when I was 4 years old and I became obsessed with it. And
Wow. How'd you
yeah,
start meditating when you were 4 years old? Tell
yeah,
us that quickly.
I actually talk about it in the book, but just
Okay.
briefly, my grandmother was babysitting me, and she would babysit me as a little girl. And one day, she said, "Come here, lay down, close your eyes, and walk out of your body." And that was the first exploration I ever had of an out of body experience. And in the next couple of years, my grandmother taught me chanting, meditation, astral projection, energy healing, all of that. And I became deeply obsessed with it and read lots of books about it at a very young age. And so this has been a part of my life for a very long time now, practicing breath work, energy work, meditation, inner healing, inner exploration. But what was really the impetus to write this book was that so much of this was in my personal life, and then it eventually became my professional life. And then over the course of 13 years, I've been doing this professionally for 13 years. I realized that there were so many things that people needed to know that were, miraculous in any other realm, that really could be experienced by anybody who tried it. And so I wanted to get it out, and that, a book is obviously such a great way to universalize and get the word out on ideas. And so that's how that developed. But the actual concept of the book, it was really interesting because, when I had been approached to write the book, it was, okay, I have a million things that I could share about. So what do I choose from? What is that central story? And that was a challenge for me in the very beginning.
And how did you decide what to hone in on and what to make your book about?
I don't know about you or your clients, May, but I found that that the proposal process was actually one of the more challenging parts of this entire thing. And I wanted to share that because I don't think a lot of people know that. I didn't know that. I thought that, I had a really wonderful experience in that I was approached to write my book before I went out and actually pitched it. So when that approach came, unbeknownst to me, the publisher then said, "Great, we'd love for you to write a book. Now write a proposal." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I went on about a 9 month journey of finding, like, out of all the 30 plus years of this work and my personal practice, what do I share in, 75,000 words? And so that part was really challenging. And what I'll say is that I just had to go through the iterative process of distilling down over and over and over again, what is it that I want to say? What is the most important thing? And then the question for me that really helped was, if I'm no longer here, or if I'm just not around to tell somebody, what are those things that I would want them to know most? And that's what really helped refine the outline of the book.
Yeah, I'm so happy you said that, Milana, because I find that I completely agree. I tell people that if you do the work of writing a proposal, whether or not you end up with a traditional publishing deal, I mean, it went the opposite for you. You were approached by a publisher to write your book. But a lot of people go into that process not knowing. And I say, you know what? Even if you don't get a publishing deal and you decide to self publish, that process will still be so valuable for the reasons
Yes.
that you just said, right? It's structuring your book, it's figuring out what's in and what's out.
Yes.
So I'm impressed that you took 9 months to engage in that process.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think the other thing that I really want to underscore in this conversation is that one of the biggest truths that I discovered in this book writing process is that ultimately the book for me was about taking my personal spiritual and uh, taking my personal practice and my personal growth to the next level. For me, this book was an opportunity to deepen my connection with myself, with my values, my principles, and for me, a more transcendent state that has meaning beyond any physical or tangible success. And so, when I finally let myself be in a process around personal discovery and a connection with something greater than me that wanted to come through me, that's when it became interesting, not just in my own daily practice of writing, but that's when the stuff that was coming through in my daily practice of writing started to actually get interesting. So it's an interesting thing because you are doing something that is very repetitive. You're writing every single day. I mean, I would recommend that. You're writing every single day. You're outlining. You're talking through ideas. And if you're not personally interested, passionate, and deeply engaged in this material for the purpose of merely just getting to work with it and dive deeper, then the whole process and the end product is really not going to be worth all that it takes to get there.
So great. So well said. Yes. I was just reading a blog recently that someone wrote that said, AI can help you brainstorm ideas and it can edit your writing, but AI is not interested or disinterested in anything that you have to say. And I was like, oh my God, that's so good. That's so good. And that's what you just said. Like, you have to be interested. The interest is an excellent measure of how good your writing is.
Yes, yes, and the passion and the genuine connection that you have with your own work and what you want to say is again what makes all of the hard work worth it because it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. Tell us what the process was then once you had kind of distilled. What did you distill as the essence of your book? What is it? Like, share with us, share with our listeners what it is about.
Yeah. Well, I just want to give some credit and respect to all of the writers out there who have written more than 25 pages because before writing this book, I had never written more than 25 pages, and those were not edited pages. So, and then to anybody who was like me, just know that you can not be a writer or an author by trade and still write a book. You can learn in the process because that's what I had to do. And I think at some point that's what we all have to do to become professionals at our work. And for me, a lot of my struggle was actually not knowing how to write, not knowing how to communicate my words in written form. I'm a speaker. I tend to work in more long form content. I teach a lot of trainings, a lot of multi-hour, multi-day talks and workshops.
Mm.
And so for me, I came into it thinking, oh, I can just easily just make that into a book. And I had no idea that writing and speaking are a little bit different. And so for me, a lot of it was quite literally learning how to write as I
Mm.
wrote. And that was very challenging, but also just gave me an incredible amount of personal healing and breakthrough because I had to just keep coming back no matter how much it wasn't working. And I imagine Maymay, with so many writers and authors who are already professional, that that's already something that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis as they sit down to write.
Yeah, and I can often talk about the messy middle, which is not my concept, right? It's borrowed from many other domains and industries and everything. But for a book, I think that's definitely part of what happens is we have a little burst of energy at the beginning, excitement about the project, words are flowing out onto the page, and then we hit this like middle part where it's like, oh my God, I'm not done yet. I have more to go. And then, then you have to edit it and get it to the next level. So yeah, it takes a lot of commitment and returning to butt in the chair, as I say so
Yes.
eloquently.
Yes, butt in the chair. That one was a big
Butt
one for
in the
me.
chair.
That was a big one. It's just like, they say in yoga, 90% of the practice is getting to the mat. Like you got into the room, you sit your butt in that chair, and that's most of the hard work there. And then if you can just let yourself start typing or start writing and get out of the
Yeah.
way, then it tends to take care of itself. But you have to keep doing that over and over and over again. To get back to your earlier question about what the book is about. And, I said earlier, I was thinking about what are some of the most important aspects of my work that if I weren't in the room and I wanted somebody to
Yeah.
know what it is that I live my life by or how I share this work with my clients and my community, what would those things be? And I realized that what I was talking about were tenets and principles. What are the core principles of my work, and what are the core and foundational tenets that I repeat over and over again to my clients, to my teachers. I also have a teacher training where I teach facilitators to share this work in their communities and with their clients. And so, what are those core things? And so, I quite literally wrote down all of the things that I repeat most often, that I am known for in my work with my community. What does my community repeat back to me? Um, and what are those things that if I were talking to someone that I didn't know or talking to someone that I knew very well, what would I tell them? Um, are the things that help me get through tough times or have helped me transcend or break through. And so I just listed those things, and I started to write little mini essays on those core tenets, on those core principles. And then over time, and this was many months, once I got down to, okay, wow, these are all the things I can think of that are the most foundational pieces of the work. Because, by the way, I could probably write 15 books if I would have kept everything. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I edited it down to, okay,
Cutting
what,
room floor.
yes, what's like the kindergarten level of this, and not because it's not deep work, but what's the most, maybe the best way to put it is like, what's the most universal entry point to those core tenets, those core
Mm.
principles. And so I chose seven, not realizing that seven was a really good number. Maybe it's so obvious that it just came to me, but I thought, okay, let's choose seven. And then from that, I also thought there's some foundational like slogans of mine that I wanted to keep, but that weren't quite full chapters. And so I created those slogans, and I chose the top four, and I became those became the four tenets. And that's kind of how I structured the book. Started with the four tenets, and then followed it with the seven principles, and all of that encompassed, as much as I could clearly communicate what I felt was the most foundational aspects of what has helped me go from having an extremely traumatic childhood and very
Mm.
dysfunctional family system to
Mm.
having also beat all kinds of chronic illness issues and physical
Mm.
ailments, to having a truly miraculous recovery that
Haven't.
really helped me transcend so much, but
Mm.
also helped me break through into the life that I live today. And that's what's in the book. And it's backed up by not just my stories, but with
Mm.
some of my clients and community stories as well.
So give us an example, please, of one tenant or principle and a story, because we know about stories. That's what I'm always telling people is like, please don't bore us endlessly with the how to and the blah, blah, blah. Like we're going to tune out. What we tune into, what our human brains tune into is story. So a trend and a story, if you don't mind.
So one of the core tenets is that experience is greater than analysis. And so what I talk about often in my work is that, we can have a conversation all day. You can read my book multiple times, make all kinds of notes, think about it. But if you don't allow yourself to go into the experience of it, applying it into your life, embodying it, something as simple as doing the breathwork practice and then actually letting yourself let go of your fears, that letting yourself experience what it's like to no longer let your fear be louder than your trust is so much more powerful than you reading about it in my book. So this whole book is an invitation to you to try the things that I'm talking about for yourself and test me to see if what I'm saying is true. And so that's one of the core tenets. A lot of the practices that we do, whether it's in my trainings or in my monthly breathwork sessions, the talking part or the reading or the journaling is about 25% of our gathering. 75% is, okay, let's actually experience what we just talked about, what we just thought about, because that's where you really have the transformation.
So do you also put exercises into your book? Do you offer
Yes.
people that? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Integrative breathwork, which is the breathwork practice that I teach and put have put a training together for, is one of the core practices. So breathwork is woven throughout the entire book. And then one of the stories that I really love in this book that I shared recently, that I pulled out of the book, is that I won Project Runway. I was a model on Project Runway in 2010.
I
A lot
love
of
this
people,
part of the story. I'm so glad you're telling this because it is such a cool story. Please tell
a
us that
lot of
story.
people have no idea that I've had many, many lives. When they come on my Instagram, they just see meditation. They don't see much of the stuff that I don't post about anymore. But yes, I won Project Runway back in 2010, and I tell this story because it is one of my most tangible experiences of the principle of faith. And I give that as one of the foundational principles of the book because faith, in my view, is not a religious faith. It's a faith that is based on a deeper trust that there is a benevolent force that is working to make everything for your use, to make everything that is happening in your life for you instead of against you. And so it's this idea that we can listen and co-create and communicate with this greater force so that we can live the life that we imagine, and that these visions that we have, these hopes that we have for our lives, that these are actually implanted on the inside of us because it's to help us become more of who we are, more of who we're meant to be. And so integrative breath work is one of the paths that I've help myself to experience that. But winning Project Runway was also one of the ways that I was able to experience that, because when I got the audition, the call for the audition to go to the casting, I heard in my inner voice, "You are the winner of Project Runway," before I even got to the casting room. And over the course of what seemed like an impossible, random experience of winning over 4 months on the number one show in the world at the time, in terms
Wow.
of viewership, I was able to come into a deep relationship with my faith that I was already the winner of Project Runway before I won. And I did win. And it was one of the most beautiful spiritual experiences of my life.
I have goosebumps. Really extraordinary. And I love the coming together of the writing of the book with the exercises in the book and then the workshops and trainings that you do. So, this is a great segue into the topic of building a platform as an author because most of the people I work with, right, they realize that they're not going to become rich and famous by writing a book. But they
Newsflash.
also,
Nobody,
yeah,
nobody told me
newsflash,
that.
Um,
No, they did. They did.
Only Carrie Bradshaw on Sex and the City
Yeah.
ever lived a glamorous New York lifestyle on an
Gosh.
author's salary. I love that show. I'm like, that is so wildly unrealistic.
Totally. You sold us a dream.
But it's such a dream. But everyone realizes that their book is an extremely integral part of their platform. And so I'm curious for you, how does the book fit in with the work that you do in workshops, in trainings, and how do you see that as part of your brand platform?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, it's really nuanced for me because what I realize is that this is best as a top of funnel product, if you will, as in this is something where if you don't know me, this is a great way to get to know me, and it's probably more likely to find you because it's a lower price point and it's widely distributed. And then secondly, if you do know me, this is another great way to reconnect with me. What I'm so grateful I did not do is I did not make this a part of my like lower funnel product, as in I didn't make this a book about my trainings. It's not the handbook for integrative breathwork, which would have been a much smaller audience. And I'm so grateful I didn't because that's something that I'm going to own. I do not want a traditional publisher to have that kind of IP. And so I just want to recommend that if there's anybody who has their own method, they've developed their own school, their own frameworks, I highly recommend that you do not do that with a traditional publisher. If you do, that you get paid a lot of money because that is very valuable IP, especially when it's attached to trainings, your brand. But if it's something on the higher tier, something that's like mass market, or at least that's in a large category, such as wellness or meditation, then it's a great way to bring people further down into things like trainings, coaching programs, and things like that.
Right, because your book, as you explained it to us, is introducing these tenets and principles. And it's also, I would imagine, a way for people who do know you, maybe they've even been to your trainings, to get to know you better as a person and connect
Yes.
with you and feel like more of a personal connection.
Yes, I think the personal connection part is really important. A lot of people ask me if this was a memoir. It's not a memoir, but there are a lot of very personal stories that I share in this book because I felt that it would serve the work, if you will. But I also was very mindful that if I shared myself honestly and openly, that that would be a really great way to connect with my people. I'm sure there will be people who read the book who are like, Milana's not my person. And that's actually probably great too. It's a really great filter in that regard because I did really share my heart. And I find that in general, when it comes to, online videos and things like that, I've always experienced that when you really share yourself, you find your people and your people find you. And so I think including that aspect of yourself in the book is really wise as well.
I think it's imperative in this day and age, frankly. I really do. I think like you have to share some of yourself with your reader. That doesn't mean you have to go into your most traumatic, terrible childhood memory and
Nope.
spill the beans on that. No, you can save that for your trusted,
Yes.
loved ones and therapists.
Yes.
However, you have to share some of yourself. And that means you have to tell some of your failures and struggles as well as your success.
Yes, because I think
Yeah.
especially I mean, with AI in particular, and with so many people in the space that we're all in on the internet, people want to have a personal connection. People want to know that you're a real person and that these are real stories that they can relate to, and not AI, and not just another influencer brag,
Yep,
but someone
exactly.
who is like, this is really the work that I live, as well as have had a lot of experience in professionally. So yeah, it's a big part.
So tell us a little bit more now back to the publishing, the actual, nitty gritty. You mentioned IP.
Yeah.
Just quickly, define that for people who don't know in terms of like, why does a traditional publisher, why does that take your IP versus self-publishing doesn't?
Yeah,
In
well,
your words.
yeah, I mean, I will say that in terms of like the legal process and all of that and what that means, I'm not the best expert. What I will say is that I I really realized that there are two different aspects of publishing with a traditional publisher or just publishing in general. There's like the art of it, which is the process that you go into of writing the book and having those deep moments where you're like, wow, there's something bigger than me that's trying to come through. And then there's the business. And I thought I liked the business side because I am an entrepreneur, but I didn't realize I much prefer the art side. I much prefer the art. And the art is really, in my experience, it's a part of my soul. It's a part of my spirit. It was like in many ways having a baby. It was very challenging for me when I realized I had to give that baby away because it wasn't just my baby. And I didn't get to decide. I didn't even get to decide when the baby was going to be delivered. I had to sign something and I was told that that's when it's going to be delivered. They gave me a little wiggle room, but that there wasn't much. So there's so much about when you publish with a big publisher and you have a book deal and you have contracts and you've got entire corporate companies and teams waiting on you to do your part in that agreement that you know take your baby and your art and your voice and your message and put it into a system and an industry and a corporate money making machine. And you want to make sure that what is truly closest to your soul and your soul's work, that you protect that because these corporate entities can never take care of those spiritual personal gifts that we're here to bring. And so for me, I'm so grateful that I had such a wonderful experience in terms of how the publisher came to me. I have
Mhm.
um, had some lovely people that I've gotten to work with, and I realize that at the end of the day, it is a capitalist corporate structure that you are putting your work into. And so when you talk about IP, be mindful of the fact that you're not going to own it all. You're going to have a business partner with you. And that business partner isn't an individual, it's a corporate multinational company that wants to
Yes.
make money.
That's right. That's right. And in your contract, usually there are specifications of how much of the content of your book you can reuse and repurpose if you traditionally publish. If you self publish, you maintain 100% ownership. If you publish with a traditional publisher, they actually own that content. And I think you're only usually, in my experience, you're only allowed to reuse about 20%. Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
was just telling a friend the other day who self-published because, she said, well, I didn't publish with a big, big three publisher like you. And I said, girl, let me tell you, with what you published, because she published her manuals for her method, which is like her
Mm.
life's work. I'm like, I am so glad you did not sell that to a corporate company that has no interest but making money. And that
That's
doesn't
right.
mean that the people within these companies don't care about us or our work. They do. But there are larger structures that will be in place when those people leave these companies. And so, yeah, really recognizing that whatever you do in terms of publishing in the traditional route is going to be mostly owned by someone else. And I found that even though I got a pretty sweet deal for where I am in my career, I realized that when it comes to some of my deeper work as it relates to um, my most personal art and spiritual practice, that is going to be something I will self-publish.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. So you wrote it yourself. You didn't work with a ghostwriter,
I did
which
not, and
is
I thought that
amazing.
everybody wrote. I had no idea,
No,
Mamie, that I was
everybody works
rare.
with a ghostwriter. Yeah, it's the exact opposite, Milana. Yeah.
People were like, you wrote your book? And I was like,
Yeah,
wait,
you wrote it
what? What is
yourself.
everybody doing? I'm so confused.
So what was did you tell it? So you said you wrote every day, which I super highly recommend. Everyone out
Yes,
there, you hear
every
me
day.
like a broken record on this. I'm like, do a little writing every day, even if it's 5 minutes. James Clear, Atomic Habits,
Yes,
even if it's 5 minutes, better than, I mean, some people will still take a writing retreat, but I feel like that's best for like that final push when you
yes,
need like 3 days because you're so burned out and to finish
yes,
it. But
yes.
what was your process?
Oh my
Tell
gosh.
us.
Well, this really became an extension of my morning pages. I have to give credit to the morning pages practice. I really leaned on my morning pages. And for a while, a lot of the book was just morning pages because I needed,
Mm.
again, to just practice and get my ideas out in a way that wasn't really about the book. It was really about me seeing what I wanted to say and what wanted to come through. And so I really love to type on my computer. I know that's actually I have a friend who's writing a book right now. She's writing everything in her journal. That's not that's not
Some
me.
people do that. Yeah, I know. Some people find that more
She
therapeutic or
loves that.
easier or more flow. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I say choose whatever it feels best for you, and sometimes that might alternate. But for me, I would get up. I mean, I love that I can say this about myself, May because I used to not be this person. I got up at 4 a.m. 4 a.m.
Wow,
And
Milana.
the reason why I'm going to do the humble brag
Oh,
is because
wow.
at 4 a.m., no one is expecting you to respond to their text messages, to their emails, to their
That's
phone
right.
calls. And so when you get up at 4 a.m., there is this clearing where you know that actually it would be inappropriate for you to send a text message at 4 a.m. Like, what are you doing? You should be sleeping. So I would get up at 4 a.m. I would read and then I would start journaling or I would sometimes do note cards. Sometimes note cards were a great way for me to organize some of the ideas that were coming together. And it was after a few months, it really became really, really fun because I let that be enough. And I'll tell you though, by the 6th month, I then slipped into what some might call the dark night of the soul because
Hmm.
I had exhausted all of my ideas. I had gotten it all out. And then I was like, none of this makes sense to anybody but me. It just makes sense. Now I have to filter this down into like something that could be a book. And I have to tell you, I really hit a dark period for about 3 weeks because it just like everything I wrote sucked. I felt like none of it made sense. And it wasn't until, and I actually talk about this in my book, I got approached to do a breathwork event at a big festival on the theme of joy. And I had been working so hard to earn being an author. I was like, I'm not good enough. I have to be better. I'm not making sense. And I'm like, and then I get this offer to do a talk and a breathwork session on joy. And I realized 6 months in, oh my God, I've lost all of my joy because I've been so
Wow.
concerned with being good enough, with being smart enough, with being understood. What if I just let myself have joy again? And it also turned out that that was one of the missing principles in the book.
Oh.
And that's when everything then picked back up. I went from the dark night of the soul to slowly getting back to having confidence again, and things started to sound better eventually.
That's so cool. And became a principal in the book
Yes.
of
And
joy.
actually that part is something that I really found very interesting that goes back to one of my core tenets, and that is that everything is for our use.
Yeah.
And I found in that moment, that dark night of the soul moment at month 6, that most people, if they don't have a contract to literally finish by a certain date, they just stop at the dark night of the
Yep.
soul. Everything
Absolutely.
sucks, this doesn't make
Yep.
sense. Well, and actually what really makes it the dark night of the soul is you go from everything sucks to I suck.
Yes. And then you quit. And then you quit. And that's
And
so
then you
true. And especially
quit.
for authors, so many people walk away when they have 50,000 words or
Yes,
more.
yes. Because you go from criticizing and downing your work to criticizing and downing yourself. I
That's right.
remember literally saying, who am I if I can't even communicate my deepest passions to the world? I fucking suck. Excuse my French. I
Right.
suck. And so that dark night of the soul is really to bring back that tenet. Everything is for your use. It turned out that if I let myself suck, and I let myself be this like average first time writer, then what I realized, what I discovered in that was, oh my gosh, I'm not an academic. I don't have a master's in this. And that might be something that reaches more people. What if I lean on that? What if my simple language makes this more accessible? What if my silly jokes make this more endearing to the people who are my people? And so I started to own the things that I thought were so bad And that's when the whole process turned into something that was useful.
That's so cool. What a great story.
Thank
So then
you.
you finished and then you edited it,
Yes.
which I was lucky enough to get
And
to
that's
help
when
you
we
a bit
got to
with. Thank
meet.
you. That was such an honor. I loved it and I learned so much from it. And
Oh,
I
thank
always did
you.
yoga and I've meditated for many, many years, but I haven't done much breath work. So you've really inspired me to start out with a
Let's
few
do it
deep
someday
breaths.
together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's. Then tell us about promotion because I also say to people, guess what? You do all this work, you birth your baby, and it's only the beginning of the journey because then you have a whole long, big, complicated process.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are
I
you promoting your book? How is your publisher helping you or not helping you? What does that look like for you?
Well, I just want all the authors and soon to be authors know that my friends who had published books, both self-published and traditional publishing, told me, hey, just know that the marketing is totally on you. So basically, what I found out was that whether you go with a traditional publisher, even a big publisher, or you self-publish, you're doing the same amount of marketing.
Absolutely.
Newsflash. Like
Newsflash.
I thought that no, 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 no. My friends didn't really mean it. I mean, there's got to be like no. And this is no shade on my team or my publishers. I realize that this is how the industry is now.
This is no shade on any publisher. This is Hollywood again selling us a fantasy of a book tour and like this, someone from the publishing agency
Yes.
escorting you across the country to packed rooms.
Totally.
Not true, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And it is the industry because the book deals that I have done with people when I've co-authored, two of my last books got advances of over $500,000, Milana. Now, you would think that that publisher was going to support them in promoting it. Do you know what? Opposite. They said, great. Now you take that advance and you spend it on a publicist.
Yes. This is what I learned in talking to people, and that's why I wanted to just really lay it bare. And actually, I want to get even more nuance in this. Only are you going to either get a publicist, you're going to have to hire somebody in your team to help you push your book out for you. And don't even think about traditional media. Focus on podcasts, on influencers, because honestly, I've been in every single traditional magazine. That's not selling your book, unfortunately, unless it's the New York Times featured, article level. But even getting featured in Vogue, it doesn't move books. I mean, it's really wild, or even your products. So, even when it comes to the PR, that's one side. You got to hire somebody for that, whether it's an agency or an individual. But here's the thing that really got me, May, the event production. Oh my God. I had no idea how much event production would come with something that you don't immediately get paid for. So I've done many retreats and trainings. I've done literally over 1,000 events, but those are events I sell tickets for and that I am getting paid for. But with a book tour, unless you're selling tickets for the price of the book and you have bought your own book, so then you make some of the profit from the book that you bought of your own, which by the way, you have to make the initial investment to buy your own books in bulk. You are
Even from a traditional publisher.
Yes, yes. You are now producing events across the country or around the world that you have to have your own team for, travel, hotel, photographer, videographer, in my case, flowers, post and pre-production. I mean, all of it. And if you don't hire an events production team for every stop, guess who's the CEO? You, the author. So that alone, I mean, I did 3 events,
Wow.
and truly that was so much more work than I imagined because I had to self-fund that. None of that was, there was no ticket that was coming back to fund all of that production. And that's something that no one told me about when it came to a book tour.
No, I'm so happy you said that. No, and like I said, that's where getting an advance from a traditional publishing company for your book can be helpful,
Yes.
because that basically is the money that you're supposed to use to do that. That, like,
Yeah.
you're not supposed to use that money to pay yourself a salary while you write. You're so I love how you're laughing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's the
You're
thing.
supposed to
The book.
use it to pay for the events that you have to throw and the PR person you have to hire.
Exactly. Exactly. So how you pay yourself when you're writing full time, think about that, my friends
Right.
out there. And
Yeah.
even with a six figure, because I had a near six figure deal, and I like to be
Wow. Wow.
transparent about it because my friends have told me, wow, Milana, that's a pretty good deal for these days.
That's a big deal right now. In this day and age, my agent said hardly anyone is getting six figures.
Yeah.
And the days of the $500,000 advances, that's over. That is
Yeah.
over. And now you're lucky to get six figures.
Yeah. And so then I realized, my
Yeah.
goodness, you have
Yeah.
to work while you write. You have to invest at least half of what you get for your advance on the launch alone, let alone bringing in editors, bringing in some people actually have to pay for their own audiobooks. Some deals don't include that, which I didn't know. But the actual like book writing process and the production, I paid for my own book cover design. Photography, if you want to have a fresh photo in that book of yours, you got to pay for that. So even if you get a deal that's like, wow, this is a great deal, what I learned and what I would tell anyone listening out there is that you're going into business with someone who is expecting you to do majority of the work, and the money that they're going to give you is an investment for the latter part of that work. And if you're going to do something like this, I would really consider and weigh your options about how you want to do that business deal, because it might be a better opportunity for you to self-publish. And I will say, one of the things that I realized for my own ego, I really was like, oh yeah, I've
Yeah.
got a big publisher, like this is so I've got a
Yeah.
big agent, and I'm like, guys, in the world that we're living in today, and I think my publishers and some of my own team members from traditional media would even say this, it might actually not be that big of a deal anymore because the world has shifted and the industry has shifted so much.
I'm so grateful to you for saying that. And I want to be respectful of your time because we've recorded for 45 minutes. But thank you for saying that. I do think that there are factors that go into the decision. There's factors about what you can afford to pay for out of pocket and all of that. But also just a reminder that less than 1% of books get a deal. And so you really, yeah, less than 1%. It's fierce out there. And so the people who do kind of say, oh, but it's not a real book if it's self-published, you just have to get past that. It's just not true anymore.
It's not true. It's not
It's
true. And in
not.
fact, some of the best-selling books that came out in 2025 were self-published. And some
Yeah.
of those people who self-published because they had a whole marketing mix, full funnel. I mean, I don't know if you heard about the gentleman who owns acquisition.com. I can't think of his name right now, but he
Yeah.
he made millions of dollars selling his book. I know that that's
Yeah.
obviously rare, but there are ways
Yeah.
to do this that make this a very impactful business opportunity. And that's why I think that it's something to really think about. How do you want to approach it? And really, what's your why?
What's
What's
your
it
why is
for?
the bottom line too.
Yeah.
Millana, I'm so grateful to you for taking all this time to speak with us. And thank you for sharing so authentically about your own journey with publishing
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah.
Tell us where to find you and how to find you. And of course, we'll also link to you and buying your book and all of that.
Yes. Well, you can find me at millanasnow.com. That's MILLANASNOW. And millanasnow.com/book is where you can buy my book. And you'll also see that we have the integration, which is a membership that takes all the things that I've shared in the book and puts it into practice with on-demand and live stream videos. And I will just invite anybody who is thinking about writing their book, or you're in the dark night of the soul, like I mentioned I was, and you need support, come into the integration because this is a really great
Mm.
place to do that deeper work that I was talking about to make it for your use and to make this not just some sort of checklist or bucket list thing that you do, but really an opportunity to go deeper in your own healing and personal transformation. To me, that's what all this was made it worth it, that I got to become a more of who I am through this process. And I'd like to offer that to you if that's something that intrigues you.
Thank you, Milana. I love that invitation. Thank you for ending on that beautiful note. I think that many people come to the process of wanting to write a book thinking that it's to build their platform or do more thought leadership or speak more, whatever it is. And what they come out the other side of 100% of the time is with deeper self understanding and self
Yes,
awareness.
exactly.
So it's like a lot of people don't even think about that, but hey,
Yep. And that's what it's all about, folks.
that's it. That's it. Thank you so much. I
Thank you,
really
Maylin.
appreciate it. All right. Good luck
Thank
with
you.
It's All Within You by Millana Snow. We're all going to go find that book and support you as an author, and join your community to do some deeper integration work as we go on the journey of becoming authors ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.